We're into the World War I section now, and this was known as the War to End All Wars, or the Great War. One of our first stops in this booth, this section, is a tribute to one of our namesakes from Fort Myers, and that's Channing Page, Captain Channing Page. And he was a World War I aviator, and it was from him that we have our small airport named in Fort Myers, Page Field. He was a very good pilot, and actually died in a civilian crash after the war in the Everglades. He was doing private work, and he survived the war as an aviator in World War I, but he died in a crash in the early 1920s. This section has a lot to do with aviation. In this area, we have a leather helmet that was used by an aviator, and also a very rare piece. It's still in its crate, and it's called a gun sight for a World War I plane. And these actually mounted right above the machine gun, and the pilots were able to just point at it as they sighted it in, and then fired their machine guns. The earlier World War I planes had the machine guns on top of the wings, so the guys actually had to stand almost to fire that, or pull the rope to fire the machine gun. The famous aviator of World War I is the Red Baron von Richthofen, Manfred von Richthofen. So we have a few pieces that are related to him. The top piece is a piece of artwork that was done, and that was signed by the Red Baron's last victim. And the Red Baron that day actually forced him down, which is considered a kill. And this was kill number 80 for the Red Baron. And the very next day is when the Red Baron himself was killed. Most people feel by ground fire. Von Richthofen was only 25 when he died. The two major areas that World War I is known for, two areas, is gas warfare. So we have a mannequin dressed in his gas mask, and there's also a picture of an infantry soldier with a dog, and the dog also wears a gas mask. The other thing that World War I is known for is the trench warfare. And if you saw the new movie 1917, that had a lot to do with the trench warfare. So that was a deadly combination if you're dealing with gas and also trenches, because when they fired the gas in the artillery shells, the gas would just waft over the trenches and just settle over the trenches, and the guys had to breathe that in. So it was a deadly combination. If you weren't killed by machine gun fire, a lot of times you were gassed, and your internal organs were affected by the gas. We also have a display here of a soldier with a pigeon, and the pigeons were used to carry messages back and forth. Both sides used them, the Germans and also the Allies, and they would put the message on the leg of the pigeon, attach it to the leg on a capsule usually, and they would fly back and forth. They were homing pigeons, so they would fly between the lines and deliver the message and then fly back and forth. Like I said, both sides used them. So the natural enemy of the pigeon is the hawk, and if the other side saw a pigeon in flight, he would usually release then a hawk to knock down that pigeon. We have some pieces in this case. and one is a pair of eyeglasses, and it belonged to a survivor of the Lusitania. The Lusitania was a civilian ship that was torpedoed during the war, and that was the spark that really got America involved in the war because there were so many civilian casualties. The Germans were just trying to zero in and stop the flow of supplies across the Atlantic. And because of that, it got America involved into the war. We also have a piece here. It's called the McClellan Saddle. General George McClellan was a Civil War general, actually led the army at one point. And but his design of the saddle goes back to the late 1850s, where he patented this design, and this is in very nice shape for being over a century old, and it includes the scabbard, a rifle scabbard on the side, and also the saddlebags with it, and it's in very, very nice shape. So this is one of our better relics from both the famous Civil War soldier, and also transition into the World War I period. The World War I was fought. It was kind of transitional war between the modern and the old, because we still had a lot of cavalry and a lot of horses being used, but also we were fighting with vehicles, trucks and tanks, and machine guns. So it was a modern war also. This is one of the modern pieces we have in our museum, and this is the French-built Hotchkiss machine gun. So we recently got this in as a display item to our museum, and it's in very nice condition. It was probably used as a tanker machine gun because of the design on the back side of it. These are pieces that were forged by soldiers. Soldiers in the front lines in the trenches had a lot of time on their hands, and also when they weren't fighting, they could actually do projects like trench art. It was called trench art. So they would form different designs from shell casings, and here we have an ashtray with a 50 caliber bullet in it. That's something that was forged, and it's called trench art. This is also a rare piece because it still has its original case, and this is an artillery rangefinder that is an American piece, and these would go parallel, and you would sight in the artillery through it. It was like a giant periscope, but there was just so much artillery being fired in World War I that these were used quite a bit. So because it has the original casing to it, a leather case, carrying case, it's quite valuable.